When we talk about the concept of deposits, so the broader statute, if you see, you have section 2 clause 31, which defines the deposit, and then you have rule 2 of the acceptance of deposit rules 2014, which gives the extension to this deposit definition, and it probably says that what would not be considered as a deposit. So the deposit definition, it says everything is deposit, every amount of money which or anything which the company receives is considered as deposit. But then you have rule 2, which gives out some sort of an extension that these are not considered as deposit. So if the company is receiving money in these particular form, the deposit, it will not be considered as deposit, and henceforth the provisions with respect to deposit or the restrictions with respect to the deposits will not be applicable. Then you have section 73, which says that prohibition on the acceptance of deposit from the public. So section 73 says that a company cannot accept deposits from the public. So then from whom the deposits can be accepted? The deposits then can be accepted from the members of the company. So it gives the provision that you can accept deposits from the members of the company. And then you have section 76, which says that the acceptance of deposit from public, but this is only by certain classes of companies. So section 73 says that no company is allowed to accept deposit from the public. If they want to accept deposits, you can accept deposits from the members of the company. And then you have section 76, which says that, okay, certain classes of companies, if they want, they can accept deposit from the public, uh, again, subject to the provisions and the compliances which are given in section 76. Then we have section 74, which says that damages for the fraud. And then you have section 76A, which says the punishment for the contravention under section 73 or section 76. Now, if you're wondering where is section 74, so section 74 is a transition section which says that the deposits which were accepted in the 1956 Act, they are going to continue in the 2013 Act, and they will have to be repaid as per their tenure, or as per they'll have to fit into the provisions of the Companies Act 2013. Now, if you see the definition of deposit, so it is defined in section 2 clause 31, and it says that the term deposit, so the deposit includes, so it's an inclusive definition, it includes any receipt of money by way of deposit. So if the company is receiving deposit by way of deposit, then definitely that is a deposit, or loan. So second way is the loan, and third is in any other form. So deposit, loan, or in any other form, that will be considered as a deposit here. So what is the definition of deposit? So deposit is basically the receipt of money by the company. Okay. So this is the receipt of money by the company, and this is in the form of deposits. Okay. One is in the form of deposits. Next is in the form of a loan, and third is in any other form. Now, when it says any other form, this creates a problem. Why it creates a problem? Because then any receipt of money would be considered as a deposit only. So let's say the company is selling any product, it is receiving amount from the customers, the selling price from the customers, or a company is providing services and it is receiving money from the customers or its client. Will that be considered as a deposit? So if you go by the plain definition, like rule of literal interpretation, then it says that yes, that will also be considered as deposit. But then you have the rule of agedum generis, which says that no, deposit, loan, so any other form doesn't mean any other form. Like how we said that receipt from customers, it is any other form, means again related to deposit, loan, right? So it is going to be just extension of these two only. Okay. So this is the definition of the deposit. But then it says that, but it does not include such categories of amount as may be prescribed. Now we know, and whenever in the Companies Act or wherever in any act, the word as may be prescribed is being inserted. This means that we need to refer the rules. So here is where we are going to refer rule number 2 in consultation with the Reserve Bank of India. So rule 2 is going to provide you an exception that the amount which is received either by way of deposit or loan or in any other form, that will not be considered as a deposit, right? So just see what rule 2 provides. So I have made a exception list. The fine print is already there in the folder, okay, the Google Drive folder, so you can refer it from there. But I have made it in a little simplified manner in the slides form only, so that we can have more focus on the discussion rather than me scribbling all the provisions. So just see that. So any amount which is received from the central government or from the state government or from the local authority or from the statutory authority which are constituted under the act, or any other source whose repayment is guaranteed by central government or state government. So this part talks about the receipt of money from the government, and this part says that the money is guaranteed by the government. So that will not be considered as deposit. So now whatever we are going to discuss will not be considered as deposit. So let's say you receive loan from the government, or let's say any other form. So let's say you receive subsidy from the government, and this subsidy is not basically the permanent one. You have to repay this. Okay. Now this will not be considered as a deposit because it is received from the government, or if it is received from any local authority, or you have received the money from the bank. Okay. Any other source. So you have received money from the bank, but that amount is being guaranteed by the central government or state government. Therefore, it will not be considered as a deposits. So this is the first exception which is there in the rule 2. Then you have any amount which is received from foreign. Now, if you see throughout the word, you'll see one thing common, that is foreign, foreign, international. So again, that's foreign. Multilateral, then again, it's foreign, or foreign, foreign, foreign. So you'll find foreign word everywhere. Again, resident outside India. So any amount which is received, so just to remember, like just to remember, any amount which is received from the foreign government, or any amount which is received from the foreign bank. Now, even if you receive it by way of a loan, that will not be considered as a deposit. If you receive it from the international bank or multilateral financial institution like the SCO, or let's say IMF, right? Or if you received a foreign government owned and developed financial institution, so that will also be not considered as deposit. If you received money from the foreign export credit agency, that will not be considered as deposit. If you receive money from your foreign collaborator or from a foreign body corporate, that's, let's say, your holding company, right? If you receive money from a foreign citizen or from a foreign authority, or basically a person who is resident outside India, PROI, even that will not be considered as a deposit. So in short, just to understand, you can say if amount is received from foreign, that will not be considered as a deposit. Okay. First is any amount which is received from the government or which is guaranteed. The repayment is guaranteed by the government. That will not be considered as a deposit. The next is the amount which is received from the foreign. That is also not considered as a deposit. Then we have the third source where we say that where the loan or the facility, right? The extension, the amount which has been assistance, the cash assistance that has been extended by any banking company or by State Bank of India. So again, in that case, you will have an exception. This will not be considered as a deposit. Then you have a loan or financial assistance, which is received from a public financial institution, regional financial institution, insurance company, scheduled commercial bank. Again, that will also be not considered as a deposit. Then if the company is issuing commercial paper, okay, and that commercial paper is issued as per the Reserve Bank of India guidelines, even in that case, it will not be considered as a deposit. Otherwise, if you see commercial papers, this is again what? This is again an borrowing only, right? You are again receiving borrowing only. So here again, it is considered as a exception, and this will not be considered as a deposit. Next is when the amount is received from another company. So A Limited giving money to B Limited, even this will not be considered as a deposit. Next is you have the application money which is received for the allotment, or which is received in advance for the allotment. Now just see, there are two bifurcations to this. People sometimes they make this mistake. They say 75 days. Don't make it 75 days. You have a breakup. So within 60 days from the receipt of that money, company needs to do the allotment. Okay. If the company does allotment, then it is absolutely fine. The allotment is done. Then it is not considered as deposit. For 60 days, you kept the money. That was amount which was received in any other form. So in that category, you can say the amount was received, but still it will not be considered as deposit because within 60 days, the allotment has been done. But if the allotment is not done in these 60 days, then you have been given a 15 days extension time. So in these 15 days, you need to repay this money, right? You need to repay this money. If you repay this money, if you refund this money within 15 days, then it will not be considered as deposit. So that's how sometimes people say 75 days, that is 60 plus 15. But just understand, it is not 75, it is 60 plus 15. So within 60 days, you have an obligation that you need to allot. And if in these 60 days, you don't allot, then you have the next 15 days time period where you have to refund. Now understand, this amount has to be refunded. This amount has not to be adjusted. Take for example, let's say, Pooja, I give you example in your name. You have given this money, this application money for my company's application, for the application as towards my shares, subscribing towards the shares of my company. Now you have given me, let's presume 10 lakh rupees. Now you have also purchased goods worth, let's say 7 lakh rupees. Now you need to pay this 7 lakh rupees to me. And on the other hand, 10 lakh rupees you have already given to me towards the share application money. Now in 60 days, I have not allotted these shares to you. So I cannot say, okay, I will do a contra adjustment where I will deduct 7 lakh from the amount that I have to receive from you on account of the sale. And I will adjust this 7 lakh rupees and the balance 3 lakh rupees, I will refund it to you. Answer is no. I'll have to refund the entire 10 lakh rupees to you. So this has been clearly mentioned in the rule. Now, if I don't refund this within 15 days, then in that case, it will be considered as a deposit. So after, so sometimes this, what I mentioned that after 75 days, it will be considered as deposit. So the 75 days comes like this. So within 60 days, do the allotment. If allotment is not done, then refund the money in the next 15 days. If refunded, then it will not be considered as a deposit. Otherwise, 76th day onwards, this would be considered as deposit, and then all the compliances, non-compliances will get attracted here. Make sense? Does this make
Yes,
sense?
sir.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next we have, if the amount is received from the directors of the company, or if the amount is received from the directors as well as the relatives of the directors of the private company. So just understand, you have two things. One, you have a private company. Okay. One, you have a private company, and the other you have public limited company. Now for public company, it is only the directors, and for private company, you have the directors as well as the relatives. Now, amount which is received from the directors of the company, let's say by way of a loan, or if in case of a private company, the amount is received by the directors or by the relatives of the directors by way of a loan, then that will not be considered as a deposit. However, there is a catch here. They need to give a declaration that this is not out of the borrowings, and this has to be disclosed in the board report, the details of such money that has been received. Now, why this catch has been added? Otherwise, what is going to happen? If you see, what is not allowed directly will not be allowed indirectly. So let's say this is the company A Limited. Now A Limited wants to borrow or wants to take deposit from this particular person, right? This particular person, if this person gives money to A Limited, this would be considered as deposit as per the definition. So what this person do? This person gives money to the director of the company. Now he is or she is the director of the company, and the director in return gives this money. Now this is considered as deposit, but this will not be considered as deposit because any amount which is received from the directors of the company, that is not considered as deposit. But with this extra proviso which has been added here, now this particular director will have to give a declaration that the amount which he is giving to the company, right, which is not considered as a deposit, this is not out of the borrowings. So if this is out of the borrowings, then this will be again considered as a deposit. So in this particular case, even though the amount is received by A Limited from one of its director, still it will be considered as a deposit. And why this will be considered as deposit? Because of this particular reason. Why? Because this is a loan. The amount which is being given to the company is out of the borrowings. And if it is not out of the borrowings, then this particular director needs to give a declaration that the amount that I am giving it to you is not out of the borrowings. Only then this will not be considered as a deposit. And in the board report, provide all such details of the money that has been received from the directors of the company. Does this make sense? Guys, does this make sense? A simple logic: what is not allowed directly will not be allowed to do indirectly. So with that rule, they have expressly provided that a declaration needs to be given that this is not out of the borrowings of the company. Okay. Is this clear?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Then you have the bonds and debentures. Now this is little tricky. Now just see what I've done. I've bifurcated into 3 categories. Just understand. You have 100% secured debentures. That is not considered as deposit. Okay. If the company is issuing debentures, which is 100% secured, that is not considered as a deposit. Or the debentures are compulsorily convertible debentures. Okay. And maximum time period is 10 years. We all know that debentures can be issued for a maximum period of 10 years. Even that will not be considered as a deposit. Okay. Then you have, see, if the debentures is unsecured, just ignore this third part. What does this mean? If the debenture is unsecured, okay, if the debenture is unsecured, it will be considered as deposit. Or let's say the debentures are non-convertible, it will be considered as deposit. Yes or no? Because it says that the debentures which are secured, 100% secured, only those are not considered as deposit. If the company is issuing 100% secured debentures or bonds, that is not considered as deposit. Or if the company has issued compulsorily convertible debentures whose maximum life or the maximum tenure of the maximum tenure of conversion is 10 year, this will not be considered as deposit. Correct? Which means if the company has issued unsecured debentures, this would be considered as deposit. Or if the company has issued non-convertible debentures, even this would be considered as deposit. Right or wrong?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Right. Now just see the third part. The third part says that non-convertible unsecured debentures, but these are listed, then again it is not considered as deposits. So if it's a listed debentures, okay, if it's a listed debentures, then in that case it doesn't matter whether it is secured or unsecured. Is it convertible debentures or is it non-convertible debenture? It doesn't matter. This is only in case of unlisted debentures. Guys, this is clear? This is clear?
Yes, sir.
Right? So you have debentures. So listed debentures are never considered as deposit. But as far as unlisted debentures are concerned, then in that case, you need to see it should be basically compulsory, convertible, then it will not be considered as deposits, or it should be 100% secured, and secured by creating a charge over the assets of the company. Which assets? Assets which are mentioned in Schedule 3 and excluding the intangible assets. Okay. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Next you have, if the company is receiving interest-free security deposit. Now sometimes interest-free security deposits is being received, or let's say the deposits are being received by the company from its employees. This is basically, this works like a bond, right? So let's say Muskan, you have joined the company, the employer believes that you may leave the company in less than 1 year, or whatever the case may be. Company wants you to sign this bond, or company says that get us a bank guarantee, right? We discussed about bank guarantee in the previous lecture. Or the company says that, deposit the interest free security deposit, you have to give it to the company. That should be equal to maximum up to your annual salary. So if the amount is received from the employee, it should be interest free, and there is a cap that it should be equal to the amount of your annual salary. Then this will not be considered as a deposit. Got the logic why you have this particular provision? So security deposit from the employees, you need to take care of two things. One is it should be interest free, and the second is it should be the maximum amount should be equal to your annual salary. It can be less, right? It's absolutely fine. But if you are paying interest on this security deposit, then in that case, it will be considered as a deposit. Guys, is it clear? Does this make sense when I said when the deposit is received as deposit, but as per rule 2, it will not be considered as a deposit. So this is what the logic is. Okay. Then next is if the amount is received, which is to be held in trust. The amount which is to be held in trust. So let's say the amount is received for the subsidiary company, or if let's say the amount is received for any associate company, but again, that should be, again, it should be an interest free amount. If the company is receiving any sort of interest, or if the company is paying any sort of interest, rather, if the company is receiving the money, so company will have to pay. So if the company is paying any sort of interest, then it will be considered as a deposit. Is this clear?
Yes.
Yes,
Is this clear? Okay. Next, you have the amount which is received in the ordinary course of business. Now, this particular stream will go like a thread on Twitter. So this will be a little lengthy. So just see multiple things get triggered here. So you have received advance from your customers. Okay, that's in the ordinary course of business. Now you need to understand first and foremost, the advance up to 365 days, it is not considered as deposit. But if the amount goes beyond 365 days, then in that case, this will be considered as a deposit. Okay. Basic, plain vanilla thing. The advance up to 365 days is not considered as a deposit. Beyond 365 days, this would be considered as a deposit. Okay. Is this clear?
yes,
Sir.
Okay. Now let's say there is a legal dispute that is taking place between the customer and the company. And because of that reason, you have not refunded that advance money. And now the time period has gone beyond 365 days. Now this will not be considered as a deposit. Okay. If there is a legal dispute which is going on and the legal proceeding is pending. Now understand, they've used the word proceeding. Proceeding means there has to be some forum. The case has to run at some particular forum. You cannot say that we both are fighting. Okay. You cannot say we both are fighting where we are fighting out of court. That doesn't mean some legal proceeding should happen at consumer forum, at tribunal, at court, somewhere the legal proceeding should happen. It should be pending there. And that's where we say that it will not be considered as deposit, even though the advance goes beyond 365 days. And this is as soon as the amount gets refundable, you have to repay that amount within 15 days. If you don't repay within those 15 days, beyond that, it will be considered as a deposit. A classic example, you had given an advance to the company. Okay. You had given an advance to the company. Now you are not taking that particular product. So you get 15 days. The company is going to get 15 days time period to refund that money. If the company do not refund that money in those 15 days, their advance money, then in that case, it will be treated as a deposit, and then all the compliances and the non-compliances will get triggered. Here also, up to 365 days, this is not considered as deposit. Now you get 15 days time period after 365 days, because now this amount has become refundable. So repay that money. If 15 days you have repaid, it is fine. Otherwise, this will be considered as a deposit, right? Next, if you see, if the amount is received again in the ordinary course of business for the right, it has been received as an advance for the sale of immovable property. And this is as per the agreement, that is agreement to the sale deed. Okay. Agreement or that sale deed. And this is to be adjusted against such property only. Then in that case, the amount will not be considered as a deposit. Let's say the company has sold some immovable property. Okay, the company is selling some immovable property and it says that I need 30% of the amount in advance. So companies receive the 30% advance. Now the property would be transferred somewhere in January. It's September right now. 30% advance has been received. So it's absolutely fine. This will not be considered as a deposit. Okay. But yes, let's say somewhere in November or December, the deal gets cancelled, then it has become refundable. Now, if it has become refundable, so let's say in your agreement, you had mentioned that this would be forfeited by the company if the deal is cancelled from the buyer's end, then that's a separate issue. But if let's say it said that there is no condition as to restriction with respect to the withdrawal of the deal, even the buyer can withdraw, even the seller can withdraw this deal anytime before, let's say 31st of December. Then in that case, let's say on 1st of November, the customer or the buyer comes and says that, no, I don't want this particular immovable property and give me my 30% advance back. So now you have to repay that money within 15 days. If you don't repay within 15 days, then it will become a deposit, and then all those compliances and non-compliances will get attracted. Next is when the security deposit, when the amount is received by way of a security deposit for the performance of the contract, for the supply of goods or the provisions of services. So this is basically again to secure that the specific performance is being done. So that's where again it will not be considered as a deposit. So amount received as security deposit for the performance of contract, for supply of goods, or for the provisions of services, this will not be considered as a security deposit. Sorry, it will not be considered as a deposit. Just take example, you have received the money. Now company has placed a order. Okay, company has placed a order and the person is saying that yes, we are definitely going to supply you these particular goods. We say that we don't trust you, give us some deposit, some token amount. So the token amount has been received, right? We have, the company is giving tenders. A classic example, company is allotting tenders, like how government gives tender. The government has given tender. Okay, now take for example IRCTC. IRCTC has come up with a tender for catering services to the trains, right? For example, for Rajdhani trains, catering. Now company says, IRCTC says that, okay, you need to deposit a earnest money of 50 lakh rupees with the company if you want this particular tender. Now company is receiving, IRCTC is receiving this 50 lakh rupees towards the performance, security performance, right? So this is a security deposit. This will not be considered as a deposit. So no non-compliance, no compliance with respect to the deposits. Then you have the amount is received as an advance under the long-term project. For supplying the capital goods, you don't have any fixed days. But for other than capital goods, other goods and services, you have this 365 days time period. Within 365 days, it is not considered as deposit. After 365 days, this will be considered as a deposit. So you get some sort of a synchronization from here, right? Up to 365 days, beyond 365 days. But if it's for the capital goods, right, fixed assets and all, then you don't have any fixed days, right? So that will not be considered as a deposit. Then you have amount which is received towards the consideration for providing future services in the form of warranty or maintenance. So a typical annual maintenance contract, AMC, right? So that you have received, and that AMC you have received for 5 years in advance. So that is also not considered as a deposit, or the time period which is there in the common business practice. So in the common business practice, AMC is being taken for, let's say, 1 to 3 years only. In the industry, it prevails for 1 to 3 years. So of course, for you, it will be 3 years. Let's say the AMC in your industry, it prevails for 10 years. Then again, you cannot have an advance for 10 years. You can have advance only for 5 years. So amount which is received in the ordinary course of business. So all these amount that are received in the ordinary course of business only. Then you have amount which is received and allowed by any sectoral regulator. That will also not be considered as a deposit. A classic example for this would be, let's say, a broker, right? There is a SEBI registered broker, and SEBI allows that some amount of money you can keep as, you can receive that money. That will not be considered as a deposit. So like the margin money which you pay to the broker in case of F&O, that will not be considered as a deposit, even if it is received by the company who is a broker, right? Then amount which is received for the subscription, right? Subscription can be for print, it can be for electronic, both. This will not be considered as a deposit. Make sense? Does this make sense? The ordinary course of business,
Yes, sir.
does this make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Then amount which is received, right, by the company from the promoters or relatives. Now just understand, earlier we had the directors and the relatives. Okay. Directors of the company, public company, directors and relatives of the private company. Now, if you see here, you have the amount which is brought in by the promoters. Now, just remember, the promoters may or may not be the directors of the company. Still, they will be eligible. So amount which is brought in by the promoters or the relatives of the promoter by way of an unsecured loan. Now, why they are coming up with this amount by way of an unsecured loan? Because bank or the financial institution, they are giving money to the company. Now, the banks and financial institutions, when they give money to the company, that is anyway not considered as a deposit. But they say that we are not sure whether your company will remain solvent or not, or we need some sort of a guarantee, we need some sort of an assurance. The promoters say that, zaban diya, हम गारंटी है हमारा, but they say that ये बड़े बड़े जबान वालों को हमने देखा है. We have seen what had happened to Vijay Mallya. No one had ever thought that Vijay Mallya will become a willful defaulter. Nirav Modi, no one had ever thought he will become a willful defaulter. Then Anil Ambani, if you see, no one had thought that Anil Ambani would himself come to a court and say that I am literally bankrupt, right? So we don't know what may happen to you tomorrow. All good wishes are with you, but we also need some sort of a security from your end. So in that case, pursuant to the stipulation, that is one of the condition of the agreement, when the loan is being received from the banks and the financial institution, they say that promoters also have to deposit a certain amount of money by way of an unsecured loan. Now remember, this cannot be a secured loan. The promoters or the relatives have to deposit an unsecured loan. Now the company is receiving money from two ends. One is from the banks and the financial institution, and second is from the promoters and the relatives. Both these amounts will not be considered as a deposit. But the moment you repay the loan of the bank and the financial institution, you need to repay this money to the promoters and relatives. So if you refund that amount simultaneously, absolutely fine. It will not be considered as deposit. But if you don't do that, then this amount would be considered as a deposit. So here, if you see, banks and the financial institution, they are pumping in money into the company. Second, the promoters and the relatives is giving the money. Now the company repaid the loan to the banks and the financial institution, then the company will also have to repay this money to the promoters and relatives. And just understand, what promoters and their relatives are contributing is unsecured loan. This cannot be a secured loan. Make sense? Does this make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next, if you see amount which is received by the Nidhi company, right? So anyway, if you see the concept of Nidhi companies, that the members are going to deposit money and that will be utilized by the other members of the company, that aids like a savings amongst the members and cost cutting. So again, in that case, if you say that Nidhi company, when you are receiving money from your members by way of deposit, that is a deposit and do all the compliances. The Nidhi company would say that our entire business model is now being questioned and burdened with unnecessarily compliances. So that's the reason this exemption has been given, that amount which is received by the Nidhi company, that will not be considered as a deposit. Then same thing goes with respect to a chit fund. So if a company is receiving money by way of subscription of the chit, then again it is not considered as the deposit. Then I have clubbed all these I would say funds under the SEBI Act. You have CIS, AIF, Domestic Venture Capital Fund, InvIT, REITs. Most of it we are going to anyway cover in our lecture. So AIF we have already covered. So domestic venture capital fund, this also we have covered. CIS, InvIT, REITs, if they receive the money by way of SEBI regulations, right, then it will not be considered as a deposit. Then we have amount which is received by a startup company. Now you need to understand the startup company needs to be registered. So any company, if you start and you say this is a startup company, why? Because we have just started the company. So that's not considered as startup. You need to definitely get yourself registered with the government that you are a startup company. Now this company is issuing convertible notes. Now if you remember the definition of the deposit is amount which is received by way of deposit, loan, or any other form. So in any other form, this convertible note, prima facie, if you see, this convertible note is what? This is a debt. By default, if you see, the convertible note is what? It is a debt. Okay. But then if you see the exemption part, it says that the amount which is received by this startup company from a person in a single tranche, it is equal to or more than 25 lakh rupees, and these notes are getting converted into the equity shares or they are being repaid within a period of 10 years, then it will not be considered as a deposit. So what is considered as deposit and what is not considered as deposit? So what is considered as deposit is very simple. You have 3 points, but what is not considered as deposits, there are too many if and buts. So that's what has been given here, that if the amount is received by any startup company, now just understand this startup company. Okay, this startup company needs to be the registered one, registered with the government. That startup company is issuing convertible note, and this is being issued to a person, and in the single tranche you are receiving more than 25 lakh rupees, and these convertible notes will get converted into the equity shares or they are going to be repaid within a period of 10 years. In that case, it will not be considered as a deposit. Guys, does this make sense? So this is what is the definition of deposit, and what is deposit and what is not considered as a deposit. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, just understand. I'll discuss one concept. So the definition part of deposit is already over. Now what I'm going to discuss with you all is the another aspect of the deposits. Just see what happens when the company issues or the company, since we have already done the ICDR regulation, what happens? Company comes up with the prospectus, correct? Company will come up with a prospectus. This prospectus, or based on this prospectus, company is going to receive the application money, correct? This is the invitation to offer. This invitation to offer is followed by the offer. Okay. And then after this application money, offer ke baad, you are going to get acceptance, correct? So this is the acceptance that you have got. Now after application money, the application money will be accepted, correct? Once the application money is being accepted, then what happens? You need to allot, the share certificates or credit the shares into the demat account, as the case may be, correct? And then that's how the contract is being made. Now if you see, same thing is going to happen here. You will have a circular. The company wants to accept deposits from its members or from the public. Company will have to issue the circular. After company issues circular, company is going to receive the application from the members of the company. The application would be received from the members of the company. Once it is received from the members of the company, this will get accepted. Okay. If this is accepted, now like how the share certificates are being issued here also, similarly, the deposit receipt would be issued. Make sense? Does this make sense? Yaad rahega ye wala? So allotment, and here we say that issue share certificates, or let's say credit in the demat account. Okay, so this is what happens. Now, just remember this part, and this is basically the process of accepting the deposits from the members of the company. What company is going to do? Company is going to issue the circular. Then the members are going to provide the application money, and then it will be accepted. Once it is accepted, company will have to issue the deposit receipt, which is going to be an acknowledgement that the company has received the money by way of deposit. Is this clear? Like how this acceptance makes that agreement a contract. Makes sense?
Yes, sir.
Now, if you see section 73, so like I say, section 73 prohibits the company from accepting the deposits from the public. But again, this restriction, this prohibition is not applicable to a banking company, NBFC, and a housing finance company. From public, if the company wants to accept deposit, that will be under section 76. But broadly, if you see the Companies Act, section 73, it prohibits all the types of company to accept deposits from the public. But then we have section 73 subsection 2, which says that if the company wants to accept deposit, it can accept deposits from its members. Now, who is a member? Who is a member? What's the definition of member? Is a shareholder a member? Can you say shareholder is a member of a company? Can you say
Yes, sir.
No, shareholder will become the member of the company only if his or her name is entered into the register of members.
Register of members. Yeah.
Okay, so that is very important. And then if you're holding the shares into the dematerialized form and you are into the beneficiary list of the depository, then again you are a member of the company. Okay, so if you want to accept deposits from the members of the company, you can do so. But for that, you need to pass, first and foremost, you need to pass a resolution in the general meeting. Then no demand deposit can be accepted. Now, what do you mean by this? So deposits are of two types. Now, broadly, if I explain, one is demand deposit, another is time deposit. Now, what do you mean by demand and time deposit? Time deposit where the amount would be repaid only after the expiry of that particular time period, like a fixed deposit account in the bank. And demand deposit is typical like a savings bank account where you deposit money today, tomorrow you want to withdraw, you can withdraw at any point of time. So with respect to the deposits which the company is going to accept from the bank, from the members, no demand deposit can be accepted. Okay, if the company accepts demand deposit, then by default it becomes a banking company only, right? Nature wise it becomes a banking company, so that is prohibited. So a company can accept deposits, but it can accept deposits only the time deposit, not the demand deposit. Now with respect to the time deposit, the minimum tenure should be for 6 months and the maximum tenure would be for 3 years with respect to this. And then let's say if there is any short-term requirement, there the company can also accept deposits for less than 6 months as well. But the short-term requirement tenure should also be have a minimum tenure of 3 months, and the maximum amount of the short-term deposit which the company can accept is 10% of your paid up share capital, free reserves plus securities premium. And there should be not more than 3 joint holders with respect to the deposits. There is no restriction as compared as far as your shares, but here you have that there should be not more than 3 joint holders. Then what should be the total aggregate? Now this is a little complicated chart, but don't worry, once the deposit topic will get over, I'll make a consolidated chart. Rather, I've already made a consolidated chart that will be very helpful for you to understand what are the maximum limits for deposit. So here it says that what is going to be the total deposit? The total deposit aggregate maximum, it will be what? Maximum it will be 35% of the paid up capital, free reserves and securities premium. But if it's a private limited company or if it's a IFSC public company, that's company which is there in the International Financial Service Center, then for them the limit is up to 100% of the paid up share capital, free reserves and securities premium. This makes sense? So this is for the public company. But if the public company is IFSC, then in that case, IFSC, if it's situated there, then you have a 100% limit. And even for private company, they can accept deposit up to 100% of the paid up share capital, free reserves and securities premium. Then you have a startup company. Okay. The startup company, okay, if there is a startup company where it's in the form of a private limited company. Okay. It should not be a subsidiary company. It should not be associate company of any other company. In that case, the limit of 100% is again not applicable. They can accept deposit up to twice the paid up capital or 50 crore, whichever is less. Is this clear? Startup company, which is a private company and not a subsidiary company, neither a subsidiary company nor an associate company. For such company, the limit is up to 100%, right? That 100% limit is again not applicable. They can accept the deposits up to twice the paid up share capital or 50 crore, whichever is less, up to 10 years from their incorporation. So this limit of twice the paid up share capital or 50 crore, whichever is less, this is applicable till 10 years. And there should be no subsisting default also. Of course, if there is any subsisting default, then in that case, this company cannot accept deposits. Or basically, of course, it cannot accept deposits. And of course, these limits are also of no use. Does this make sense? Right? Just see, I've written it here. Startup company, which is a private company, not an associate company. It's not a subsidiary company. The limit of 100% is not applicable. And this is not applicable for good 10 years from the date of incorporation. It can accept deposit up to twice the paid up capital or 50 crore, whichever is less. There should be no subsisting default. And the last compliance is the company should have filed DPT3, that is the deposit form, to the ROC. Make sense? Guys, does this make
Yes,
sense?
sir.
Yes,
Right?
sir.
Now, similarly, like I mentioned, the company is going to issue the circular. The members are going to accept, and the application money will be submitted by the members. Company is going to accept, and at last they are going to issue the deposit receipt. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This is all given in your section 73. Now, when we say this circular, like how we discussed, what should be the content of the prospectus? So same thing we are going to see what is going to be the content of the circular. We also read what is going to be the validity of the prospectus, which is approved. So same way, we are also going to get the validity of this circular. So the principle, the broad principles remain same, just that as per the product, the provisions get changed. So here the circular, this will be sent to all the members. Now this can be sent via registered post or speed post or through any electronic mode. And this circular will also be placed on the website of the company. This will also get published on the 2 newspapers, English and vernacular. And the copy of the circular will also be filed to the ROC 30 days prior to the issue. So you first file it to the ROC. Now you see the principles are same. File the DRHP to SEBI, correct? Same way, file the copy of the circular to the ROC 30 days prior to the issue, and then send it to the members, and also place it on the website of the company and publish it in the newspaper, English as well as vernacular. Now, the validity of this circular would be 6 months from the closure of the financial year in which it was issued. Okay. That is basically your 30th September. If you see, validity would be up to 30th of September or until the date on which the financial statement is laid before the AGM. Now, let's say this is basically you have 2 dates, and of course, whichever is earlier. Okay. whichever is earlier. Now let's say the financial statements are laid down in the AGM in the month of June itself. Then 30th September or June. So which will be the date?
June.
June. The circular will be valid till June. But let's say you get an extension for your AGM. You also get extension for AGM up to 3 months. So you get an extension and your AGM is happening in the month of December. Then in this case, it is going to be 30th September. So I'll just write it like this with a different color so that you can distinguish. So let's say the AGM is happening in the month of December. Now, if you do comparison of these two, then in that case, it is going to be 30th September. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
right. Now, since it's a deposit, you have to come up with a scheme. Okay, so again, every deposit will be made with a scheme. Okay, now I'll just mark this as one. In that deposit circular, you need to mention which type of deposit is it. Is it a secure deposit or it's an unsecured deposit? If it's a secure deposit, provide the details of charge. Okay, provide all the details of the charge. आपने कौन से एसेट के ऊपर चार्ज क्रिएट किया? Remember the schedule 3 other than the intangible asset. If it's an unsecured deposit, then in that case you need to clearly mention it in the circular. Clearly mention in the circular that this is what? This is an unsecured deposit. What is going to be the duration? What is the mode of payment? What is going to be the rate of interest? When it will be repaid? How it will be repaid? The credit rating, very, very important. What is the credit rating? And all the details of the charge, of course, if it's a secured deposit. Then you need to mention the details of the outstanding deposit. Now, I am accepting deposit now, but there are some existing deposits. So I need to mention what is the outstanding amount of my deposits, what is the rate of interest that I'm paying to them, how many total number of depositors are there, and very, very important, whether I have defaulted or not. Because the moment you default, you get a restriction to issue further deposit. So this is also to be certified by the auditor. So just understand whether the company has defaulted or not. Then the company needs to provide about the financial position of the company, and in the financial position they need to provide the profit before tax, the profit after tax, the rate, or basically the amount of dividend that has been declared, the audited cash flow statement, and the summary of the financial position. These three are to be provided for the preceding 3 financial years. Later, if you see, the declaration needs to be given by the company that the company has not defaulted in the neither in the repayment of the deposit nor in the interest payments of the deposit. Remember, that's why I said the deposits play the defaults play a very important role. So the company has not defaulted. Then the company will also have to give a declaration that the company will be able to meet its liability and it is going to remain solvent for a period of 1 year. For this, they also have to attach the statutory auditor certificate certifying these that the company has not defaulted, and if the company had defaulted, a period of 5 years has been elapsed after making the deposit good, because that's the cooling off period. So if the company defaults in the deposits, repayment of the deposit, then in that case, after the deposit is being made good for a period of 5 years, the company cannot issue any fresh deposit. Rather, the company cannot accept any fresh deposit. So for this, the statutory auditor certificate also have to be provided. Then if you see, if the company has defaulted, so that's what I said, if the company has defaulted in the repayment or in the interest, then in that case, as soon as the company has made good that default, then after the period of 5 years, the company will be able to accept the fresh deposit. So I'll just make a timeline for your understanding, though it's a very simple concept. Here, let's say the company accepted the deposits. Okay. Here I say company defaulted. the default continued for some period of time, then company made the default good. After that, 5 years time has elapsed. So what is the time period within which the deposits cannot be accepted? This is the time period. From here till here. During this time period, you cannot accept deposits. So no accepting deposits. A company cannot accept deposits during this time period. Make sense? So this has to be certified by the auditor of the company. Then if you see, company will also have to make a deposit repayment reserve. So like how you have debenture redemption reserve, you'll have the deposit repayment reserve, and 20% of the amount which is going to mature during the financial year has to be put into the deposit repayment reserve on or before 30th of the April. This will be kept in a separate bank account, and this should not be utilized for any other purpose except for the repayment of the deposits. Okay. Now, when the deposits are unsecured, like I mentioned, it has to be clearly mentioned in the circular that these are unsecured deposits. But when the deposits are secured, then in that case, you need to again mention in the circular which is the asset on which the deposit has been made secured. And of course, this asset has to be a Schedule 3 asset. Okay. This has to be a Schedule 3 asset, except for the intangible assets, where the intangible assets are not eligible. Okay. Now, when the deposits are secured, charge has to be created, and the charge should be in favor of the trustees of the deposit. The company will have to appoint one or more trustee. For that, take prior consent of the trustee. Okay. And execute the trust deed at least 7 days before issuing the circular. So remember, 30 days prior issuing the circular to ROC, execute the trust deed 7 days prior to issuing the circular, and then this trust deed will be in form DPT2. Now, the trustees, after the circular is being issued, see, they have to be appointed 7 days before issuing the circular. Now, once the circular are issued, the circular is issued. Once the circular is issued, the trustees cannot be removed before the expiry of their term, except with the consent of all the directors in the meeting, and at least one independent director should be there. So if the trustee has to be removed after the issuance of the circular, this is the criteria. Also, there are certain restrictions that some people cannot be made as the trustee. That is, the director, KMP, officer, or the employee of the company, holding company, subsidiary company, associate company, and also of the depositor cannot be appointed as the trustee. The person who is having material pecuniary relationship with the company cannot be appointed as the trustee. If the company is indebted to the company, the person is indebted to the company, holding company, associate company, subsidiary company, or group subsidiary, or the company has entered into any guarantee agreement with respect to the deposits. So let's say the company defaults, then I am there to repay that money, or for the interest, then again in that case you cannot be appointed as the trustee. Conflict of interest is the simple reason. Then the application will be received from the members. Okay. And the declaration has to be given by the depositor that it is not out of the borrowings. Otherwise, what it is going to do, what the company is going to do, company is going to basically, where the company is not eligible, company is going to ask its member, take money from them and then give it to us. So basically the siphoning of the money, or you would say वो घुमा घुमा के जो पैसा आता है वो नहीं होगा. So the declaration will be given by the members that the deposits is not out of the borrowings. Now, once the deposits are received, within 21 days of accepting of the deposits, company is going to issue the deposit receipt. So this is like the share certificate. And in the deposit receipt, what is going to be the content? It is going to mention that on which date the deposit was received, the name and address of the depositor, the amount which is received, what is the rate of interest, and when the deposit is going to be repaid, the due date. This is going to be the content of the deposit receipt. Thereafter, if you see, a register of deposit will be maintained where the name and address of the depositors would be provided, the PAN number, nominee, deposit receipt number. So basically this is going to be a unique number. Okay. This is going to be a unique number, deposit receipt number, date and duration of the receipt of the deposits, due payment, due for repayment, that these deposits, when it is due for repayment, the rate of interest and the particulars of the charge. Everything will be mentioned in this particular register of deposit. Next, if you see premature repayment of the deposits. So on the request of the depositors, just understand, first and foremost, understand that we are not talking about the demand deposit. This is not demand deposit. So basically the depositor cannot say that I need my money, you have to pay. It is on the request of the depositors on or before the maturity. Company is allowed to repay the deposit, but there is one condition, that the rate of interest would be reduced by 1%. Okay, so this is some sort of a penalty which has been put in. And there is annual reporting which company needs to do. So on or before 30th of June, company needs to file form DPT3 to the ROC with respect to the deposits as on 31st of March. What is the deposits which is there? So when you are working in a company or when you are working in a firm, while doing the annual filing, you should always check the balance sheet of the company. Sometimes company may say that, we don't have any deposits, but later on when you go through their balance sheet, while filing their annual return or their financial statement, AOC4, while you're filing AOC4 or preparing the contents for AOC4, that point of time you realize, oh God, this was a deposit and the DPT3 should have been filed before 30th of June, and now you have missed the due date, because generally the annual filings and all happen in August and September only. So you realize that you have made a mistake here. So make sure that you don't do this. Okay. Now, if you see public company, so the financial statement should disclose the amount of deposits which is received from the directors. In case of private company, it should also disclose the directors as well as the relatives, because in case of public company, the amount which is received by the relatives is considered as deposits. Okay, so this is basically, since the exemption has been given, therefore you need to give it the disclosure in the financial statements. Then repayment of the deposit or its renewal, so that has to be refunded along with the interest as per the terms of the acceptance. Now if the company defaults, okay, if the company defaults, what is the remedies that are available to the depositor? The depositor can approach NCLT, and then NCLT will order the company to pay the sum or pay the damages or any other order as it deems fit. Okay, does this make sense?
Yes, sir.
Guys, does this make sense?
Yes, sir.
Right now you have section 76. Now what does section 76 say? Section 76 say that a company can accept deposit even from public, not just from the member, from public also. So if the company wants to accept deposit from public, then what is the condition? First of all, you have to be the eligible company. What is an eligible company? Eligible company is the one which is a public company and have a net worth of 100 crores or more and a turnover of 500 crores or more. So this is the eligibility. First and foremost, this is the eligibility. Now let's see the condition. This is the condition. Now this is the condition. What is the condition? That the company needs to pass a special resolution or the company needs to pass the board resolution. Now there are two cases. The company will have to pass special resolution if they exceed the borrowing limit of section 180 subsection 1 clause C. That is, they are exceeding, with the acceptance of this deposit, they are going to cross paid up share capital, free reserves and securities premium with their existing borrowing. They have some existing borrowing, okay, plus the deposits which they are accepting. This is going to cross this limit. Then in that case, pass the special resolution. But if the existing borrowing plus the deposit which you are accepting, this is within the limits of section 180 subsection 1 clause C, then company needs to pass the ordinary resolution. Does this make sense? Guys, when you have to pass OR and when you have to pass SR, your existing debt, okay, plus the deposit. Now you need to see whether the limit of section 180, is it exceeding or not? If this is within, then OR. And if this is beyond, then in that case, you need to pass SR. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then again, you need to comply with all the conditions which are given in section 73 subsection 2. That is the circular, the declarations, everything. Now, what is the limit for the eligible company to accept deposit from public? So if it's a government company, the limit is 35% of its paid up capital, free reserves and securities premium. And in case of other companies other than government company, then in that case, maximum 10% from the members and maximum 25% from others. So this is the limit. There is a bifurcation of this 35%. So in case of a government company, there is no bifurcation. It's only 35%. But for others, you have a bifurcation, 10%, then it's the maximum limit from the members, and 25% is the maximum limit for the others. So like I mentioned, I have made a small chart where everything is being summed up. So deposit limits under section 76, government 35, others 10%, 25%, 10% from the members, 25 from others. And what is this 35, 10, 25? It's the paid up capital, free reserves and securities premium. As far as section 73 is concerned, from if it's a public company, okay, if it's a public company, the limit is 35%. If it's a private company, the limit is 100%. If it is a IFSC public company, it is 100% of the paid up capital, free reserves and securities premium. Startup company, which is also a private company, and up to 10 years from the date of incorporation, they can have twice the paid up share capital or 50 crore, whichever is less. Okay. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Now,
Yes, sir.
the 4 deposit forms. कंपनी सेक्रेटरी है तो फॉर्म्स के बिना तो बात बंद होगा नहीं. सो DPT 1 is your circular, DPT 2 is your trust deed, and DPT 3 is your return of deposit that you file annually, and DPT 4 is your deposit under section 74, which is, I said, the deposits which were accepted prior in the, basically prior to the Companies Act 2013. So जो deposits आपने 1956 Act में accept किया था, ये उसके लिए है. Okay. So with this, we can say our deposits is over. So in the other forms of the borrowing, deposits is over. Tomorrow we will start with the commercial paper. Tomorrow we'll be through with commercial paper, and then day after tomorrow we'll start with section number 186. So tomorrow will be a short lecture, but section 186 will be a lengthy one, like our today's lecture. Okay.
Okay, sir.
All right then. That's it for your today's lecture. Take care. Bye bye.